Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy and today I'm going to show you how to make basic clothes for your crochet dolls. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to make a princess dress with puffed sleeves and an overskirt. This pattern is really easy to customize to any size doll, but I'll be making mine to fit my realistic body doll. If you want to know how I made this Barbie size dress, as well as the dress for my basic doll, those sizes are available in the written pattern. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, you can use any size you like, I'm going to use a size E. A pair of scissors, a yarn needle to sew in your ends, you'll need some bobby pins or stitch markers to keep track of your stitches, and you'll need yarn. You could really use any yarn to dress your doll, but I find a thinner yarn works better because it won't add too much bulk to your doll. You could use crochet thread or embroidery floss, but I'll be using these bunches of Aran weight yarn that I split into a 2-ply yarn, which I'll show you how to do in a moment. I did this because it's a lot easier and less expensive to find 4-ply worsted weight or Aran weight yarn in a huge variety of colors than it is to find crochet thread or embroidery floss. And if you'd like a written pattern, you can find one in my Ravelry store. The link is in the description below. So I'm going to begin by untwisting my yarn. I'm using this rosy pink from Karen brand. I don't remember what color it is, I just know I have a ton of it. And also this darker pink from Loops and Threads Impeccable. So I'm going to unravel a bit of yarn from the skein and cut it off, so that I can work the twists out of the yarn as I unravel it. Then I'm going to untwist a section of yarn so that I can see the 4 individual strands that make up the yarn. I like to work from the middle out to each end of the yarn. Next I'll divide them in half, so I'll take 2 of those strands and pull the yarn apart a little bit. Then I'll untwist the yarn and continue pulling apart the strands until I get to the end. Every once in a while, try to work some of the twists out of the end of the yarn so it doesn't get as tangled. This process may take a while and you may want to try to do huge sections at a time or work quickly, but don't. Trust me, if you work slowly and in small bunches, the yarn is way less likely to become tangled. It'll take longer and be more frustrating in the long run if you have to disentangle the yarn, so just continue to work slowly and untwist it. Then just do the same thing on the other side. There, now we have a whole pile of split up yarn to make up the dress. Hopefully it's enough, but of course if you run out you can just make more. Now let's make the dress. If you've seen my fitted doll shirt and doll skirt tutorials, the method is very similar to those 2 tutorials, but with a little bit of extra steps, plus the puffed sleeve style of sleeves, and the overskirt I'll be adding at the end. Also, I changed the technique slightly for shaping the armholes, so I'll show you those changes too. If you want to see how I made a basic shirt and skirt, you can see that in my other video. But I'm just really quickly going to go through the method again in this video. I'm going to start with a chain that's the same width of the neck opening I want to make for the dress. So I'm going to chain 24 to create a low neckline for this dress. If you want, you could use pins to measure your chain against the body of your doll. If you want to make a higher neckline style, you should chain a smaller amount, like 12 or 6. Just measure your chain against your doll. So I'm going to work in rows, so I'm going to chain 1 to count as the first stitch of the row. And I'm going to mark it with my bobby pin as the first stitch of the row. But if you like, you could work in the round if the doll's head isn't too big to get the dress on, or if the neckline is wide enough to fit the head through when dressing the doll. Next, I need to increase 6 per row to widen the shoulder straps. To increase at the shoulders, I'll increase 3 times at each side. Measure against the doll to be sure of where you're placing the shoulders. I added just 1 row of increasing each side 3 times. If you're making your dress to fit a larger or smaller doll, you might want to increase for more or for fewer rows. To begin the next row, I'll chain 1 for the first stitch, then mark that chain with a bobby pin. Next, I'm going to single crochet until I get to where I want the first armhole to go. Then to create the armhole, I'm going to chain 4, and skip 6 stitches. Then single crochet in the next stitch. If you want to make a larger or smaller armhole, you could skip and chain fewer stitches or more stitches. Just make sure to skip 2 more than you chain. Also, I'm going to use more bobby pins to mark some of these stitches to make it easier to work the sleeve into this area later. I'm going to mark these chains, and the sides of each of these 2 single crochets on each side of the armhole, because they'll count as a stitch when making the sleeves. Next, I'm going to make the bust. Keep single crocheting until you get to the middle front of the row where the bust is going to go. I just need to single crochet 1, then I'm going to increase 6 stitches in the middle front of the work. but you should increase the same number you used when making your doll. Or if you're not adding a bust to the shirt, just single crochet between the armholes instead. Next, I'm going to repeat the same thing I did to create the first armhole to make another one on the other side. Measure against the doll to be sure of where that is. So I'm going to single crochet until I get to where I want the next armhole to go. I'm just going to single crochet 1. Then chain 4 and skip 6 stitches. And single crochet into the next stitch and until the end of the row. And again, if you like, you can mark these stitches and chains for making the sleeves later. In the next 2 rows, to shape the armholes more like a circle, I'm going to do some increases and decreases around the chain I made at the armhole. Since I made my first basic doll shirt tutorial, I've changed the method for doing this just a little bit. First, I need to single crochet until I get to the chains at the first armhole. Also, when I'm working into the chain, I'll work into the loop behind the chain. You can see the loop here behind the loops that I marked with the bobby pins. So I'm going to skip this first chain, increase the next 2 chains at the middle, and skip the last chain. Then I'll single crochet into the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side when I get to the other armhole. If you made a larger sized chain, just do the same thing, skip the first chain, increase the 2 middle chains, and skip the last chain. If you made the chain for the armhole smaller, just skip this step and do regular single crochets in each stitch of the chain. Because with such a small sized armhole, the increases and decreases don't really make that much of a difference to the shape. Also, remember that the skipped stitches, each chain, and the sides of each of the 2 single crochets on each side of the armhole will count as a stitch when making the sleeves. So I'll leave the bobby pins in to mark those stitches for now. They really do make a difference when it's time to make the sleeves. Next, I'm going to continue the bust. If you want to keep making the bust bigger, continue to increase the 6 stitches at the middle front, but to end the bust here, either add single crochets to elongate the bust, or add rows of decrease to narrow the bust. I'll show you how to do that later in the video, but for this row I'm going to single crochet at the bust until I get to the chains on the other side. Then I'm going to skip the first chain, increase the second and third chain, and skip the fourth chain. Then single crochet until the end of the row. In the next row, I'm going to do another row of increases and decreases at the armholes. Again, I changed the way I do this part since making my first doll shirt video. In the original video, I switched back and forth where I put the increases and decreases under the armholes in each row. I think it gives the armholes a more circular shape if you just always place the increases at the middle and the decreases on each side instead of switching them back and forth. The reason I did them this way originally was to try to eliminate the curves at the sides of the row. And it does work pretty well for that purpose, but it also makes the armholes a little less curved at the bottom, and a little more flat, so I prefer doing it this way. Since I chained 4 when making the armholes, I'm just increasing and decreasing the armholes for 2 rows, but if you made a bigger armhole, you may want to do it for a few more rows. It would probably work to increase and decrease 1 row for every 2 chains you made at the armhole. So I'm going to single crochet until I reach the stitch before the increases at the armholes that I made in the previous row. So I'm going to decrease the next 2 stitches together. To decrease, I'm going to place my hook through the front loops of the next 2 stitches. Then I'm going to pull up a loop through both of those stitches, and then single crochet to decrease. Next, I'm going to increase the next 2 stitches. And decrease the next 2 stitches together. And I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side for the next armhole. Again, if you made the armholes bigger, just do the same thing and place 1 decrease on one side, 2 increases in the middle, and 1 decrease on the other side. And if you made the armhole smaller, just skip this step and do regular single crochets under the armhole. Next I'm going to single crochet one more before I get to the bust. If you want your doll bust to be bigger, you could continue to increase the same way you did in the previous row, or continue to elongate the bust by single crocheting. But I'm going to end the bust here, so I'm going to decrease the same amount of stitches I did to increase the bust. Since I increased the bust 6 times, I'm going to decrease the bust 6 times in this row. So pull up a loop through the front loops of the next 2 stitches, and single crochet to decrease. So I'm going to do that 5 more times in the middle front of my row. Next I'm going to single crochet one more until I reach the stitch before the increases I made at the next armhole. Then I'm going to decrease that stitch and the next stitch together, and increase the next 2 stitches. Then decrease the next 2 stitches. And single crochet until the end of the row. If you want, you could continue to add rows of increase or decrease at the bust to make it bigger or smaller, or you could add a few rows of single crochet to lengthen the bust. I'm going to go on for just one more row of single crochet. To continue making the bodice fitted, I'm going to add some more rows of decreases and increases to shape the shirt to the waist and hips of the doll. I'm going to start by gradually decreasing the sides of the garment for a couple of rows to create the waist. That means I'm going to decrease 2 times per side per row of decrease, but with 2 rows of normal single crochet in between every row of decrease. Again, use the same number of decreases or increases for the waist that you used when making the doll. You can decrease or increase more or fewer times depending on the size of your doll's waist. Just measure against the doll, and continue to decrease with 2 rows of single crochet in between until you reach the desired width for the waist of your doll. For my doll's bodice, I decrease 2 times per side for 1 row, Then single crochet for 2 rows in between, then decrease 2 times per side for 1 more row. To create the hips, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to gradually increase instead of decrease. That means I'm going to increase 2 times per side per row of increase, but with 2 rows of normal single crochet in between every row of increase. Again, use the same number of increases or decreases for the hips that you used when making the doll. Continue to increase with 2 rows of single crochet in between, until you reach the desired width for the hips of your doll. For my doll, I increased 2 times per side for 1 row, then single crocheted for 2 rows in between, then increase 2 times per side for 1 more row. Next, I'm going to widen the back of the bodice for the doll's rear. To do this, increase 2 to 6 times per row at the back, depending on the size of the doll's rear. Again, use the same number of increases you used when making your doll. For my doll, I increased 4 times at the back for 1 row. Next, I need to increase the work all the way around to make up the skirt. I'll be increasing 6 times per row, so I'm going to divide the total number of stitches in the row by 6 to find the number of stitches to increase by. I have 30 stitches total, so I'm going to increase every 5th stitch of the row. Don't worry if your work doesn't divide evenly by 6, just make sure to add 6 increases, more or less evenly spaced throughout the row. Or, if you want to make a less bulky skirt, increase fewer times per row. For a 3/4 circle skirt, increase 4 times per row. For a half circle skirt, increase 3 times per row. And for a 1/4 circle skirt, increase 2 times per row. Or for a pencil skirt, don't increase at all and single crochet until the skirt reaches the length you want. Alright, I finished with the first row of increase. For the rest of my rows of increase, I'm just going to continue to increase by the next number, so in the next row I'll increase every 6th stitch, then in the next row I'll increase every 7th stitch of the row, then every 8th stitch of the row, and so on. Since I started the work in rows, I'm going to start to work in the round for the next row. So to join the row in the round, instead of chaining 1 for the first stitch, I'm just going to single crochet into the last stitch of the previous row. And mark that as the first stitch of the row. This tutorial is starting to get a bit lengthy, so I'll show you how to complete the skirt in the next video. I'll also show you how to make the puffed sleeves and the overskirt, so be sure to check it out. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and share it on social media. If you want to see more doll clothes tutorials, you can find a playlist at the end of this video, or check in the description below. If you want to see how I made the doll I used in this tutorial, you can find the link to the pattern in the description. Or if you want to support my work, consider donating to my Patreon page. You can get some pretty cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos before everyone else. Find more information about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!